The whisper of existence. Welcome. Pause for a moment. Close your eyes if you can and simply breathe. Right now, in this very instant, you exist. You are aware. You are thinking. You are listening to these words. But have you ever stopped to consider just how profoundly unlikely this moment truly is? How improbable your existence really is? Tonight, we embark on a journey through time itself, traveling backward through billions of years to discover the long, fragile chain of events that had to unfold in precisely the right sequence for you to be here, breathing, thinking, wondering. This is not a story of certainty or inevitability. This is a story of miracles disguised as physics, of mathematics so delicate that the slightest change would have erased you from existence before you were ever born. Before we begin this exploration, I invite you to subscribe to the Relaxing Science channel. If you find peace in understanding the cosmos, if you feel calm when contemplating your place in the universe, please give this video a like and share with us where you are listening from right now and what time it is in your location. Your presence here, in this moment, matters. The universe is approximately 13.8 billion years old. Earth has existed for about 4.5 billion years. Modern humans have walked this planet for merely 300,000 years. And you, your specific consciousness, your unique arrangement of thoughts and memories and dreams, has existed for only a few decades. When we place these numbers side by side, something extraordinary becomes visible. The probability of your existence is so vanishingly small that it borders on the miraculous. And yet here you are, not by accident but through an unbroken chain of improbable events stretching back to the very beginning of time itself. Imagine, for a moment, the vastness of what had to happen. Countless stars had to be born and die. Atoms had to form in stellar furnaces. Planets had to coalesce from cosmic dust. Life had to emerge from simple chemistry. Single cells had to evolve into multicellular organisms. Fish had to venture onto land. Reptiles had to develop into mammals. Mammals had to evolve consciousness. And through all of this, through mass extinctions and climate catastrophes and countless moments where the thread could have been severed forever, your direct lineage had to survive. Not just survive, but thrive. Every single one of your ancestors, going back millions of years, had to meet, to fall in love, or simply to reproduce at the exact right moment. If any one of them had died before passing on their genes, you would not exist. If any one of them had never met their partner, you would not exist. The probability compounds with each generation, each moment, each narrow escape. This is what we explore tonight. Not the cold mathematics of probability, though those numbers are staggering. Rather, we explore the poetry of existence itself. We contemplate the miracle of awareness emerging from matter. We trace the long story of how the universe, through billions of years of transformation, eventually learned to know itself through beings like you. This is a journey of gratitude, really. A gentle reminder that your existence is a gift of almost incomprehensible improbability, and that the very fact that you are here, conscious and aware, is perhaps the greatest miracle in all of creation. As we move deeper into this exploration, allow yourself to relax. Let your shoulders drop. Feel your breath moving gently in and out. We will travel through deep time together, and there is no rush. The universe has already waited billions of years to tell this story. It can wait for us to tell it slowly, carefully, with wonder and reverence. The facts we will explore are real, grounded in science and observation, but the way we explore them is through contemplation and poetic language, creating a space where learning and relaxation intertwine, where understanding becomes a form of meditation. The human brain in this moment is capable of holding two truths simultaneously. The first truth is that you are made of ordinary matter, the same atoms that comprise stars and stones and distant galaxies. The second truth is that the arrangement of these ordinary atoms into you, into this specific consciousness experiencing these specific thoughts, is so improbable that it transcends randomness and enters the realm of the miraculous. Both truths are equally valid. Both are grounded in science. And together they create a perspective that is both humbling and deeply reassuring. As you settle into this experience, know that you are not simply listening to information. You are participating in a story that is in many ways your own story. Every concept we explore, Every scientific principle we examine, every moment of cosmic history we contemplate, is part of the narrative that led directly to you. You are not separate from this universe. You are not an observer standing outside of it. You are the universe itself, become conscious, become aware, become capable of understanding its own origin and nature. And that, more than anything else, is the true miracle that awaits us in the hours and years to come. The journey begins not with you, but with the universe itself. It begins at the very edge of time, at a moment so ancient and so strange that our minds can barely grasp it. It begins with nothing, or it begins with everything compressed into nothing, a singularity of infinite density and infinite temperature. It begins with the Big Bang. And from that moment of unimaginable power and transformation, everything that follows becomes possible. Everything that led to you becomes inevitable. Not in the sense of certainty, but in the sense of a long chain of possibilities, each one dependent on the last, each one improbable in itself, but collectively creating the only universe we know. Rest here for a moment. Feel the weight of these thoughts. The universe is old, yes, but not infinitely old. Life is rare, yes, but not impossible. And you are here. You are conscious. You are aware. And that awareness, that ability to contemplate the cosmos and your own place within it, is perhaps the most precious thing the universe has yet created. As we move forward into the next phase of our exploration, carry this sense of wonder with you. Carry the understanding that you are not accidental, but rather the result of a long, improbable, beautiful chain of cosmic events that somehow, against all odds, led to this moment, to you, to now. The universe's first breath. In the beginning, there was nothing and everything simultaneously. This paradox is not merely poetic language, but a genuine description of what physicists believe occurred at the moment of the Big Bang. Approximately 13.8 billion years ago, our universe came into existence. Not in a place, but as space itself. Not at a time, but as time itself. The Big Bang was not an explosion happening within space, but rather the emergence of space and time together, along with all the matter and energy that would eventually become galaxies, stars, planets, and ultimately, conscious beings capable of wondering about their own origin. In the first fraction of a second after the Big Bang, the universe was incomprehensibly hot and dense. The temperature was so extreme that the familiar particles we know today could not exist. There were no atoms, no electrons, no nuclei. There was only pure energy, a roiling soup of fundamental particles appearing and disappearing in the quantum foam. Yet even in this chaos, something remarkable was happening. The universe was governed by precise laws, mathematical relationships that determined exactly how particles would interact, how energy would transform, how the whole system would evolve. Consider for a moment what this means. The laws of physics that govern the universe were not created by the universe, they simply are. They have always been, and these laws are tuned with astonishing precision. If the strength of the nuclear force were even slightly different, atoms could not form. If the strength of electromagnetism were different, electrons could not orbit nuclei in stable patterns. If gravity was stronger or weaker by even a few percent, stars could not ignite, and the universe would have either collapsed back on itself immediately or expanded so rapidly that matter could never clump together. The universe, in its first moments, had to be precisely balanced, and it was. Within microseconds of the Big Bang, the universe began to cool. As it cooled, quarks combined to form protons and neutrons. As it cooled further, protons and neutrons began combining to form the nuclei of the lightest elements, hydrogen and helium, with traces of lithium and beryllium. This process, called Big Bang nucleosynthesis, took only minutes. Within 3 minutes of the universe's existence, the fundamental elements that would eventually make up everything were already created. Every atom of carbon in your body, every atom of oxygen you breathe, every atom of calcium in your bones would eventually be formed, but not yet. For now, the universe contained only the lightest elements, and vast clouds of this primordial hydrogen and helium expanding outward into the darkness. For hundreds of millions of years, the universe was dark. The photons released during the Big Bang were continuously absorbed and re-emitted by the dense plasma of particles. It was not until the universe had cooled enough for electrons to combine with nuclei, forming the first neutral atoms, that the photons were finally free to travel unimpeded. This moment, called the recombination era, is when the universe became transparent. Light could finally travel through space without being constantly scattered. The universe became, in a sense, visible to itself, and the light released at this moment, stretched and cooled by billions of years of expansion, is what we detect today as the cosmic microwave background radiation, a faint glow of ancient light that fills the entire universe. But the universe was not perfectly uniform. Tiny quantum fluctuations from the earliest moments, stretched to cosmic scales by inflation, had created infinitesimal variations in density. In regions where matter was slightly denser than average, gravity began to pull harder. These dense regions grew denser. The sparse regions grew sparser. Over millions of years, these slight variations amplified, and the universe began to take on structure. Vast filaments of matter emerged, separated by enormous voids. Within these filaments, smaller regions of higher density formed. These were the seeds of the first galaxies. Visualize this process. Imagine a vast, dark ocean of hydrogen and helium stretching across billions of light years. Imagine invisible threads of gravity slowly pulling particles together, creating vast clumps where billions of stars would eventually form. Imagine the universe organizing itself from near-perfect uniformity into a cosmos of breathtaking complexity and structure. This took hundreds of millions of years. There was no rush. Gravity is patient, and gravity, working on these primordial clouds of the lightest elements, was creating the conditions for something extraordinary to happen. Within these collapsing clouds, smaller and smaller regions formed, each one denser than the last. As regions became denser, gravity accelerated the collapse. Particles began moving faster and faster, colliding with greater and greater force. The temperature at the centers of these collapsing regions began to rise. After perhaps 100 million years of gradual contraction, the temperature at the core of the densest regions reached a critical point. Hydrogen nuclei began to fuse. They combined to form helium, and this fusion released enormous amounts of energy. The first stars ignited. These first stars were different from the stars we see today. They were much larger, much hotter, and much more short-lived. They burned with fierce intensity, and they lived fast, dying young in spectacular explosions. But in their brief lives, they accomplished something essential. They created new elements. Within the cores of these ancient stars, the process of nucleosynthesis continued. Hydrogen fused to form helium. Helium fused to form carbon, nitrogen, and oxygen. In the most massive stars, even heavier elements formed: silicon, iron, nickel. When these stars exploded at the end of their lives, they scattered these new elements into space. This process, called stellar alchemy, is perhaps the most profound gift that stars give to the universe. The heavy elements that form the rocky planets, that build the structures of life, that make up your body, did not exist in the Big Bang. They were created inside stars. Every atom of calcium in your bones was forged in the heart of a dying star. Every atom of iron in your blood was created through stellar alchemy. Every atom of carbon that forms the backbone of every organic molecule in your body was synthesized in a stellar furnace. You are, quite literally, made of stardust. Your body is a collection of atoms that were created billions of years ago in the cores of massive stars that died long before Earth even existed. The universe was becoming richer, more complex. The first generation of stars lived and died, spreading new elements into the cosmic web. When the next generation of stars formed from the enriched clouds of gas and dust, they inherited these new elements. Some of these new stars had planets forming around them, planets made not just of hydrogen and helium, but of rock and metal, of the heavy elements created in the furnaces of dead stars. The stage was being set. The ingredients were being gathered. The universe was preparing for the emergence of something that had never existed before, a world where life could take hold. Yet, none of this was guaranteed. The universe could have expanded too quickly, and no galaxies would have formed. The fundamental forces could have been slightly different, and stars could never have ignited. The early stars could have been smaller or larger, and they might not have created the right mix of elements. Gravity could have been weaker, and matter would never have clumped together into structures. Or gravity could have been stronger, and the universe would have collapsed back on itself in an instant. The margin for error was infinitesimal. The probability that the laws of physics would be precisely calibrated to allow stars and planets and eventually life to emerge was so small that it stretches our ability to imagine. And yet, it happened. The universe, in its first breath, set in motion the events that would eventually lead to you. Alchemy. The story of your body is the story of dead stars. This is not metaphor, this is literal truth. Every atom in your body, heavier than hydrogen, was created inside a star. The oxygen you breathe, the carbon that forms the backbone of your DNA, the calcium in your bones, the iron in your blood, all of it was forged in stellar furnaces billions of years ago. To understand how this happened, we must travel deeper into the nature of stars themselves, into the furnaces where the universe creates the elements that make life possible. Stars are engines of transformation. At their cores, where temperatures reach millions of degrees and pressures become almost incomprehensible, nuclear fusion occurs. Hydrogen nuclei, moving at tremendous velocities due to the intense heat, collide with such force that they overcome the electromagnetic repulsion that normally keeps positively charged particles apart. When they collide, they fuse together, combining to form helium. This fusion releases tremendous energy, which radiates outward as heat and light. This is the energy that makes stars shine. This is the energy that has warmed your face when you stood in sunlight. This is the energy that drives the weather on your planet and powers the photosynthesis that creates the oxygen you breathe. But the fusion process does not stop with hydrogen and helium. In the core of a star, conditions are so extreme that as helium accumulates, it too begins to fuse. Helium nuclei combine to form carbon and oxygen. As a star ages and its core temperature rises further, carbon and oxygen begin to fuse, forming neon and magnesium. In the most massive stars, this process continues, layer upon layer of fusion occurring in nested shells within the star's core. Each layer is hotter and denser than the one outside it. Iron nuclei fuse to form nickel. Nickel decays to form iron once more. The star builds up a layered structure like an onion, each layer composed of different elements, each layer created through nuclear fusion. This process, this creation of heavy elements through stellar fusion, is the mechanism by which the universe grows more complex. The early universe contained only the lightest elements, created in the first moments after the Big Bang. The universe was simple, monotonous, composed almost entirely of hydrogen and helium. Stars changed this. Stars are the universe's way of creating complexity. Stars are the universe becoming diverse, becoming rich, becoming capable of supporting life. Contemplate the mechanics of this process. Deep within a star, two hydrogen nuclei approach each other. They move at speeds that would seem impossibly fast to us. Yet in the quantum world, they barely touch. But at the precise moment of collision, quantum tunneling allows them to merge. A new particle forms. Energy is released. This happens not once, but trillions of times per second in the core of a star. Each second, the sun converts 600 million tons of hydrogen into helium. Each second, this transformation releases energy equivalent to billions of nuclear bombs. This has been happening for the sun's entire existence, for nearly 5 billion years. And this process, this continuous nuclear alchemy, is the reason your planet is warm enough for life. The heavy elements created inside stars remain locked within the star's core for much of the star's life. They are trapped by the enormous gravitational pressure of the star's mass, held in an equilibrium between the outward pressure of fusion and the inward pull of gravity. But this equilibrium cannot last forever. Stars are mortal. They have lifespans, though those lifespans can be billions of years for stars like our Sun, or merely millions of years for the most massive stars. When a star dies, when it exhausts its fuel and can no longer sustain the fusion reactions that keep it inflated against its own gravity, something catastrophic happens. For massive stars, the death is violent. When the core of a massive star becomes too dense and too heavy, the outward pressure of fusion can no longer support the weight. The core collapses with stunning speed. In less than a second, the entire core, which might have been the size of Earth, collapses to a size smaller than a mountain. The infalling material rebounds off the incompressibly dense core, and the energy released in this rebound creates a shockwave that blasts outward through the star. The entire outer layers of the star are expelled into space in a titanic explosion called a supernova. For a brief moment, a single exploding star can shine as brightly as an entire galaxy containing billions of normal stars. When a supernova explodes, it scatters the elements created inside the star throughout the surrounding space. The shockwave plows through the interstellar medium, compressing clouds of gas and dust, triggering the formation of new stars. The heavy elements, the products of billions of years of stellar alchemy, are mixed into these new clouds. When the next generation of stars forms, they are enriched with these heavy elements. And when planets form around these new stars, they are made not just of hydrogen and helium, but of rock and metal, of all the elements created in the furnaces of dead stars. Our own sun is a second or third generation star, born from clouds enriched by the deaths of earlier stars. The solar system formed about 4.6 billion years ago from a collapsing cloud of gas and dust. As the cloud collapsed, it flattened into a disk, with the sun forming at the center and planets forming from the dust and planetesimals orbiting around it. The rocky planets of our inner solar system, including Earth, are composed of the heavy elements created in stellar furnaces. Your body is made of these elements. Every atom of nitrogen in your proteins, every atom of sulfur in your amino acids, every atom of phosphorus in your DNA was created inside a star and scattered by a supernova billions of years before Earth even existed. This is not a poetic flourish. This is the literal truth of your origin. You are stardust, not metaphorically, but chemically, atomically, materially. The atoms that form your body have existed since the beginning of the universe, but they were rearranged in stellar furnaces. They were scattered by supernovae. They were incorporated into the solar nebula. They were incorporated into the Earth. They were incorporated into the oceans and the rocks. They were incorporated into the first living cells. They were incorporated into every organism that has ever lived. And now they are incorporated into you. When you contemplate this truth, allow yourself to feel the weight of it. You are not separate from the cosmos. You are not made of different stuff than the stars. You are a direct continuation of the universe's creative process. The same forces that created the first stars, the same nuclear processes that transformed hydrogen into carbon and oxygen, the same supernovae that scattered these elements across the galaxy, are responsible for your existence. You are the universe, organizing itself into a form capable of understanding its own origin. The history of the elements in your body stretches back billions of years. Some of the atoms in your body may have been created in different stars, in supernovae, separated by billions of years. They may have drifted through interstellar space for millions of years before being incorporated into the solar nebula. Some of the atoms in your body may have been part of different planets before Earth formed. Some may have been incorporated into earlier forms of life, organisms that lived and died long before humans existed. Your body is a palimpsest of cosmic history, a collection of atoms that have had adventures beyond imagining, that have been part of countless transformations, that have journeyed across billions of light years and billions of years to finally come together in this form, in this moment, in you. The Goldilocks moment. Earth is a planet of profound balance, not too close to the sun, not too far, not too large, not too small, not too hot, not too cold. The conditions necessary for life to emerge and flourish are astonishingly specific, and Earth meets those conditions with remarkable precision. This is sometimes called the Goldilocks principle. Earth is just right, but understanding just how precisely calibrated our planet's position and properties are reveals something extraordinary. The probability that a planet would form with exactly the right characteristics, orbiting exactly the right distance from exactly the right star, is staggeringly small. And yet here we are. Earth orbits the Sun at a distance of approximately 93 million miles, a distance known as 1 astronomical unit. This distance places Earth within the habitable zone, sometimes called the Goldilocks zone, the region around a star where temperatures are moderate enough for liquid water to exist on a planet's surface. Venus, our neighboring planet, is about 25% closer to the Sun. At that distance, temperatures are high enough that water boils away into the atmosphere, creating a runaway greenhouse effect. The surface temperature of Venus exceeds 900 degrees Fahrenheit. No water, no life. Mars, our other neighboring planet, is about 50% farther from the Sun than Earth. At that distance, temperatures are too cold. Any water that might exist freezes solid. The Martian surface is frozen and desiccated, with no evidence of liquid water today, though evidence suggests water flowed there in the distant past. Earth, by contrast, orbits at just the right distance. The Sun's warmth reaches Earth's surface, creating temperatures that allow water to exist as a liquid. This is essential. Water is the universal solvent, the medium in which all chemistry necessary for life occurs. Without liquid water, chemistry becomes sluggish or non-existent. With liquid water, complex chemistry flourishes. Earth's distance from the Sun is not the only factor determining its temperature. The composition of Earth's atmosphere is equally crucial. The atmosphere is a blanket of gases that surrounds the planet. The most abundant gases are nitrogen and oxygen, but it is the trace gases, particularly carbon dioxide and methane, that regulate temperature through the greenhouse effect. These gases allow sunlight to pass through the atmosphere and warm the surface, but they trap the heat that radiates back from the surface, preventing it from escaping into space. Without any greenhouse effect, Earth would be a frozen ball, with an average surface temperature around 0 degrees Fahrenheit. With too strong a greenhouse effect, Earth would become a hothouse, with boiling oceans and unlivable surface temperatures. The balance is delicate. Early Earth had a much stronger greenhouse effect than today, with more carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. And this was necessary because the young Sun was actually about 30% dimmer than it is today. The stronger greenhouse effect kept Earth warm enough for life, despite the dimmer Sun. As the Sun gradually brightened over billions of years, the greenhouse effect needed to weaken to maintain habitable temperatures, and remarkably it did. As life emerged, and photosynthetic organisms began producing oxygen and consuming carbon dioxide, the composition of the atmosphere changed. Carbon dioxide was drawn out of the atmosphere and locked into rocks and fossils. The greenhouse effect weakened, balancing the increasing luminosity of the Sun. The temperatures remained within the range necessary for life. This is not accident. This is the Gaia hypothesis, the observation that Earth's biosphere and geosphere are intimately coupled, that life itself has regulated the planetary environment to remain habitable. But the delicate balance extends beyond distance and atmosphere. Earth's size is also crucial. The planet is large enough to retain an atmosphere. A smaller planet, like Mars, would have lost its atmosphere to space, as lighter gases escape into the upper atmosphere and are stripped away by solar wind. The planet is also large enough to maintain a molten core, and this molten core creates Earth's magnetic field. The magnetic field is a shield that protects the atmosphere from solar wind. Without it, the solar wind would gradually strip away the atmosphere, leaving the planet barren and exposed to intense radiation. Venus likely once had a magnetic field but lost it as its core cooled. Without a magnetic field, Venus's atmosphere was slowly stripped away by solar wind, or so scientists believe. Earth's size is also crucial in another way. Larger planets retain more heat from their formation and from radioactive decay in their cores. This internal heat drives plate tectonics, the process by which the crust is broken into plates that slowly move across the planet's surface. Plate tectonics is essential for regulating the carbon cycle. When plates collide, rock is pushed down into the mantle, where it melts and is recycled. This process removes carbon from the surface and locks it into the deep earth. Without plate tectonics, carbon dioxide would accumulate in the atmosphere, creating a runaway greenhouse effect. Without plate tectonics, the crust would stagnate, and the geological processes that weather rocks and regulate atmospheric composition would slow or stop. The Moon orbits Earth, and this moon is unusually large relative to Earth's size. This large moon creates substantial tides in Earth's oceans, and these tides have been crucial for the development of life. The tides mix the oceans, distributing nutrients and preventing stagnation. The moon also stabilizes Earth's axial tilt, the angle at which Earth's axis is inclined relative to its orbit. Earth's axis is tilted at approximately 23.5 degrees. This tilt creates seasons, the variation in daylight and temperature throughout the year. The tilt is crucial for life. Without the tilt, the tropics would be extremely hot and the poles would be extremely cold, with little variation. Life would be concentrated in narrow bands around the planet. With the tilt, the distribution of heat is more even, allowing life to flourish across a wider range of latitudes. The moon stabilizes this tilt. Without the moon, Earth's tilt would wobble chaotically, varying from nearly 0 to over 90 degrees over the course of millions of years. Such variation would create extreme climate swings, with life-extinguishing temperature fluctuations occurring on geological timescales. The moon keeps the tilt stable, maintaining the seasonal variation that allows life to thrive. Consider the improbability of all this. Earth had to form at the right distance from the sun. The sun itself had to be the right mass, bright enough to warm the planet, but not so bright as to vaporize it. Earth had to be the right size, large enough to retain an atmosphere, but not so large as to become a gas giant. Earth had to have the right composition, with enough heavy elements to form a rocky body, and enough radioactive elements to maintain a molten core and magnetic field. Earth had to acquire a moon, and this moon had to be large enough to create substantial tides and stabilize the axial tilt. The moon likely formed from a collision between the young Earth and a Mars-sized object, an event that had to occur at just the right time and with just the right impact angle. A slightly different collision, and Earth might have been destroyed or left without a moon. Each of these factors is essential. Each of these factors had to align. The probability of a planet forming with all these characteristics, orbiting a star of the right mass at the right distance, with the right atmospheric composition and the right moon, is vanishingly small. And yet, Earth exists. Earth is here. And because Earth is here with all these precisely balanced characteristics, you are here. You are the product of this Goldilocks moment, this rare alignment of circumstances that created a world where life could emerge and flourish. The chemistry of awakening. 4 billion years ago, Earth was a very different world. The atmosphere contained no free oxygen. The oceans were filled with dissolved minerals and organic compounds. The land was barren rock, untouched by life, shaped only by the forces of geology. The sun was dimmer. The day was shorter as the moon orbited closer to Earth and the planet rotated faster. Yet in these primordial oceans, something extraordinary was beginning to happen. Chemistry was becoming biology. Matter was learning to organize itself in new ways. The first stirrings of life were beginning. The chemistry of life is the chemistry of carbon. Carbon is unique among the elements. It is small enough to form stable bonds with many other elements, yet large enough to form multiple bonds, creating complex structures. Carbon can bond with hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, sulfur, and phosphorus, creating an enormous variety of compounds. This versatility makes carbon the ideal element for the chemistry of life. Every living thing on Earth is based on carbon chemistry. Your body is built from carbon-based molecules. Your DNA, your proteins, your fats, your carbohydrates, all are carbon compounds. In the primordial oceans, simple carbon-based molecules were abundant. Carbon dioxide dissolved in the water from the atmosphere. Nitrogen was present in various compounds. Phosphorus was dissolved from rocks. Sulfur was present in various forms. These simple molecules, driven by energy from sunlight, from the heat of deep-sea hydrothermal vents, and from ultraviolet radiation, began to combine into more complex molecules. This process, called abiotic synthesis, created organic compounds without any living organism being involved. Scientists have recreated this process in laboratories. In a famous experiment conducted in the 1950s, researchers simulated the conditions of the early Earth by combining water, methane, ammonia, and hydrogen in a flask, then applying electrical discharge to simulate lightning. After a week of this treatment, the contents of the flask had turned reddish-brown, and chemical analysis revealed that amino acids had formed. Amino acids are the building blocks of proteins. The experiment demonstrated that complex organic molecules could form spontaneously from simple inorganic compounds under the conditions present on the early Earth. Over millions of years, the oceans accumulated a rich chemistry of organic compounds. Some scientists call this the primordial soup, though the image is more poetic than literal. The early oceans were not a uniform broth, but rather a complex environment with many different chemical zones. In some places, minerals from rocks catalyzed chemical reactions. In other places, deep-sea hydrothermal vents created extreme environments where different chemistry occurred. In still other places, shallow tidal pools concentrated organic compounds as water evaporated. In this rich chemical environment, molecules began to interact in increasingly complex ways. Some molecules proved more stable than others. Some molecules proved better at catalyzing reactions. Through a process analogous to natural selection, certain chemical reactions became more common than others. The chemistry began to show signs of organization. Molecules began to form structures. Some molecules formed lipids, compounds with a hydrophobic tail and a hydrophilic head. These molecules, when placed in water, spontaneously organize themselves into spherical structures called lipid bilayers, with the hydrophobic tails pointing inward and the hydrophilic heads pointing outward. These structures are the basic architecture of cell membranes. Imagine these lipid membranes forming in the primordial oceans, enclosing small volumes of water with different chemistry than the surrounding ocean. Inside these membrane-bound compartments, organic molecules accumulated. Chemical reactions occurred. Some of these reactions produced energy that could be used to power other reactions. The compartments became increasingly organized, increasingly complex. They were not yet alive, not yet cells, but they were approaching something that resembled life. The crucial breakthrough came with the emergence of molecules capable of self-replication. The most likely candidate is RNA, ribonucleic acid. RNA is similar to DNA, the molecule that carries genetic information in all modern organisms, but RNA is more chemically versatile. RNA can serve as both genetic material and as a catalyst for chemical reactions. Some scientists believe that the earliest life forms were based on RNA in an era called the RNA world. In this scenario, RNA molecules could replicate themselves using the chemical building blocks available in the primordial oceans. RNA molecules that replicated more efficiently became more abundant. RNA molecules that were better at catalyzing the reactions necessary for their own replication became more common. Evolution was beginning, even before true life existed. The transition from chemistry to biology is not a sharp boundary. There is no moment where we can definitively say life began. Rather, there is a gradual transition from simple chemistry to increasingly organized chemistry to something we recognize as living. At some point in this continuum, molecules became organized enough, complex enough, self-replicating enough that we call them alive. But the line is blurry. The earliest life forms were probably quite different from any modern organism. They were probably simple, consisting of little more than RNA molecules and a lipid membrane. Yet even these simplest of organisms possessed the essential characteristics of life. They could reproduce, they could evolve, they could respond to their environment, they could use energy to maintain their organization. They were alive. And their emergence, the moment when chemistry became biology, was one of the most improbable transitions in the history of the universe. The probability that random molecules would spontaneously organize into self-replicating systems is so small that it has led some scientists to question whether life could arise at all. And yet, it did. Life emerged. Life began. The chemistry of life is a chemistry of organization, of complexity emerging from simplicity. The laws of physics and chemistry are deterministic. They follow rules. But within those rules, there is enormous room for complexity to emerge, for organization to increase, for new structures and new behaviors to arise. The early Earth, with its complex chemistry, its diverse environments, its abundant energy sources, provided the perfect laboratory for this emergence of organization. And somehow, through processes we still do not fully understand, chemistry became biology. Matter became alive. The first whisper of life. 3.5 billion years ago, life existed on Earth. We know this because we have found fossils of single-celled organisms preserved in ancient rocks from this time period. These earliest known fossils, called stromatolites, are layered structures built by microbial communities. The organisms that built these structures were prokaryotes, single-celled organisms without a nucleus, the ancestors of modern bacteria and archaea. They were simple by modern standards, but they were alive, they reproduced, they evolved, they grew in populations, they changed their environment. The earliest life forms were almost certainly heterotrophs, organisms that obtained energy by consuming organic molecules present in the environment. They lived in the oceans, feeding on the organic compounds that had accumulated through billions of years of abiotic synthesis. But this strategy had a limitation. As the organisms multiplied, they consumed the organic compounds faster than new compounds could form. Eventually, the supply would run out. Life faced an existential crisis. Either life would find a new energy source, or it would starve. The solution came through photosynthesis. Some organisms developed the ability to use sunlight directly to synthesize organic compounds from carbon dioxide and water. These photosynthetic organisms did not need to consume organic compounds produced by abiotic processes. They could make their own food from the raw materials present in the environment. This was a revolutionary development. Photosynthesis allowed life to tap into an essentially unlimited energy source, the sun. As long as the sun shone, photosynthetic organisms could grow and reproduce. But photosynthesis had a side effect. The process of photosynthesis involves taking carbon dioxide and water and using sunlight to rearrange them into glucose and oxygen. The oxygen is a waste product. As photosynthetic organisms multiplied, they released oxygen into the oceans and atmosphere. For organisms that had evolved in an oxygen-free environment, oxygen was toxic. It reacted with their molecules, damaging their DNA and proteins. The release of oxygen into the atmosphere was an environmental catastrophe for the organisms that had previously dominated Earth. This event, called the Great Oxidation Event, occurred around 2.4 billion years ago. Evidence in ancient rocks shows a sudden shift in the oxidation state of minerals, indicating that free oxygen was suddenly present in the atmosphere and oceans. For millions of years, organisms were forced to adapt or die. Some organisms died out. Others evolved the ability to tolerate oxygen. Still others evolved the ability to use oxygen in their metabolism, harnessing its chemical reactivity to extract energy from organic molecules more efficiently than fermentation could. The emergence of oxygen-breathing organisms was another watershed moment in the history of life. Aerobic respiration, the process of using oxygen to burn organic molecules, is far more efficient than anaerobic fermentation. An organism using aerobic respiration can extract about 18 times more energy from a molecule of glucose than an organism using fermentation. This energy advantage allowed oxygen-breathing organisms to grow larger, to move faster, to build more complex structures. Life became more energetic, more active, more diverse. For about 2 billion years, life on Earth was exclusively single-celled. Prokaryotic cells, bacteria and archaea, dominated the oceans and began to colonize the land. They formed vast mats and films on rocks. They accumulated in soils. They lived in every environment that had liquid water, from hot springs to frozen lakes. They shaped the environment, creating oxygen in the atmosphere, removing carbon dioxide, altering the chemistry of the oceans. Life was transforming the planet. Then, around 1.5 to 2 billion years ago, something new happened. Some cells engulfed other cells. Instead of one cell consuming another and breaking it down, the engulfed cell survived inside the larger cell. The two cells formed a partnership, a symbiosis. The engulfed cell retained some of its functions, and the larger cell gained the benefits of those functions. This process, called endosymbiosis, was revolutionary. The engulfed cell eventually lost many of its genes, becoming dependent on the larger cell. But some of its genes were transferred to the nucleus of the larger cell. The engulfed cell, now reduced to a specialized structure, became what we call a mitochondrion, the energy-producing organelle found in all modern eukaryotic cells. This was the origin of eukaryotic cells, cells with a nucleus and specialized internal structures. Eukaryotic cells are far more complex than prokaryotic cells. They are larger. They have specialized compartments for different functions. They can evolve more readily because they can exchange genetic material with other cells, and because mutations in one compartment do not necessarily affect the whole cell. The emergence of eukaryotic cells opened up new possibilities for complexity and specialization. Over hundreds of millions of years, eukaryotic cells became more complex. In some eukaryotic organisms, chloroplasts, the photosynthetic organelles derived from engulfed photosynthetic prokaryotes, allowed the cells to harness sunlight directly. Other eukaryotic organisms became hunters, developing the ability to move and consume other cells. Some eukaryotic cells began to form aggregates, multiple cells sticking together. In some of these aggregates, cells began to specialize, with different cells performing different functions. This was the beginning of multicellular life. The transition from single-celled to multicellular organisms was not quick or simple. For hundreds of millions of years, multicellular organisms were small, simple, and rare. They competed with far more abundant single-celled organisms, but the multicellular form had advantages. Larger bodies could move faster and hunt more effectively. Specialized cells could perform functions that single cells could not. Multicellular organisms could survive in more diverse environments. Gradually, multicellular organisms became more common. Gradually, they became more complex. Gradually, they came to dominate the oceans. By about 600 million years ago, multicellular life had become common enough to leave visible fossils. The fossil record becomes rich with evidence of diverse organisms: sponges, jellyfish, worms, arthropods, and early fish. These organisms were the ancestors of all modern animals. They were strange by modern standards, many of them lacking features we consider essential to animals, but they were undeniably alive, undeniably complex, and undeniably the products of billions of years of evolution from the first simple cells. Yet none of this would have been possible without that first moment when chemistry became biology. That first moment when a self-replicating molecule emerged in the primordial oceans. That first moment when life, however simple, began. The probability of that moment was infinitesimal. The chemical reactions necessary to create self-replicating molecules are rare. The conditions necessary for those reactions are specific. The time window during which those reactions could occur was limited. And yet, it happened. Life emerged. And from that first emergence, through billions of years of evolution, all the diversity of life on Earth descended. The long dance of evolution. Evolution is often misunderstood. Many people imagine it as a process of constant improvement, of organisms becoming better and better over time. But evolution is not about progress. Evolution is about change. Evolution is the process by which populations of organisms change over time through the differential reproduction of individuals with different traits. Organisms with traits that make them better suited to their environment tend to have more offspring than organisms with less suited traits. Over many generations, the frequency of beneficial traits increases in the population. The population evolves. The engine of evolution is mutation. In every generation, as DNA is copied, errors occur. Most of these errors, called mutations, are harmful or neutral. They either damage the organism or have no effect. But occasionally, a mutation creates a new trait that provides an advantage. An organism with a beneficial mutation may survive better, reproduce more successfully, and pass the mutation to more offspring. Over many generations, the beneficial mutation spreads through the population. Evolution has occurred. The process is slow. A single mutation has a tiny effect. A change in one letter of the DNA code might produce a protein that is slightly more efficient, or slightly more resistant to heat, or slightly better at catalyzing a chemical reaction. The change is subtle, but over millions of years, subtle changes accumulate. A population changes. A new species emerges. Life diversifies. For 3 billion years, life on Earth was dominated by single-celled organisms. These organisms evolved, changing and diversifying, but remaining single-celled. Then, about 600 million years ago, the pace of evolution accelerated. multicellular organisms became common. The diversity of animal life exploded. This period is called the Cambrian explosion, and it resulted in the emergence of most of the major animal phyla that exist today. Within a few tens of millions of years, an explosion of evolutionary innovation produced animals with eyes, with skeletons, with specialized body parts, with behaviors and strategies never before seen. The Cambrian explosion gives the impression that evolution works in sudden bursts of change. In reality, the Cambrian period saw rapid evolution by geological standards, but the changes were still gradual on a human timescale. Organisms changed slowly, generation by generation, but over millions of years, the accumulated changes were dramatic. Organisms that were previously simple became complex. Organisms that were previously slow became fast. Organisms that were previously defenseless developed armor and weapons. Evolution is not random. It is guided by natural selection. Organisms with beneficial traits survive and reproduce more successfully, but the process of generating new traits is random. Mutations occur randomly. Most mutations are harmful. A very small fraction are beneficial. Evolution is the process of sorting through this randomness, finding the rare beneficial mutations and amplifying them. Imagine the oceans of the Cambrian period. Imagine countless organisms, each slightly different from the others due to random mutations. Imagine predators evolving to hunt more effectively. Imagine prey evolving to escape more effectively. Imagine a biological arms race, where each advance in predatory weaponry is met by advances in defensive armor. Imagine organisms evolving eyes to see better. Imagine the evolution of the first fish, with streamlined bodies and fins for movement. Imagine the evolution of jaws, allowing fish to bite and consume large prey. Each innovation provided an advantage. Each innovation spread through populations. Each innovation led to new possibilities for further evolution. For hundreds of millions of years, life remained confined to the oceans. The land was barren, hostile to life. The atmosphere lacked the oxygen necessary for most organisms to survive in exposed air. The ultraviolet radiation from the sun, without the protection of the ozone layer that would later form, was lethal. But gradually, organisms began to venture onto land. Plants evolved first, developing the ability to obtain water from soil and to support their own weight against gravity. Once plants colonized the land, animals followed, feeding on the plants and on each other. The colonization of land required enormous evolutionary innovations. Organisms had to evolve waterproof skin to prevent desiccation. They had to evolve structures to transport water from the soil to all parts of their body. They had to evolve stronger skeletons and muscles to support their weight in the absence of water's buoyancy. They had to evolve new sensory systems to navigate the visual and olfactory landscape of the land. Each innovation required millions of years of evolution. Each innovation was built on previous innovations. Evolution is not a single leap, but a long series of small steps, each one building on what came before. By about 350 million years ago, complex forests covered the land. The first insects evolved, then the first amphibians, animals that could live both in water and on land. Then came the reptiles, animals fully adapted to land life. Then came the dinosaurs, a group of reptiles that came to dominate the land for over 150 million years. Dinosaurs were not primitive brutes, as they are often portrayed. They were sophisticated animals, many of them warm-blooded, some of them highly social, some of them capable of complex behavior. They dominated their environments, adapted to nearly every ecological niche. They were evolution's masterpiece until the asteroid impact that ended the Cretaceous period. But before the dinosaurs ruled and after they fell, other groups of animals were evolving. Mammals appeared early in the age of dinosaurs, but remained small and inconspicuous. They were overshadowed by the dinosaurs. But when the asteroid impact killed the dinosaurs, 66 million years ago, the mammals survived. With the dinosaurs gone, the mammals rapidly diversified, evolving into many different forms. Some became large herbivores, some became large carnivores, some took to the air, evolving into bats, some took to the sea, evolving into whales and dolphins. Some remained on the land, evolving into the vast diversity of mammals we see today. Evolution is not progress toward a goal. Evolution is not guided by some predetermined direction. Evolution is simply the process of populations changing over time in response to their environment. But the result of billions of years of evolution is a world of astonishing complexity and diversity. A world where millions of species coexist, each one adapted to its particular ecological niche. A world where complex behaviors emerge from simple genetic instructions. A world where consciousness itself evolves, where animals develop the ability to think, to plan, to wonder. The long dance of evolution is a dance without a choreographer, a dance where each step is determined by the fitness of the dancer to its environment. Yet the result is a cosmos of beauty and intricacy. The result is a world where life in all its diversity thrives. The result is a world where you exist, where you can contemplate your own origin, where you can wonder at the improbability of your existence. The narrow escapes. Life on Earth has not had an easy journey. The history of life is punctuated by catastrophes, events of such magnitude that they nearly erased life from the planet entirely. These mass extinctions are moments when the vast majority of species on Earth died, when the diversity of life plummeted, when the world came close to being reset. Yet each time, life survived, life recovered, and from the survivors, new diversity emerged. The first mass extinction occurred about 443 million years ago, at the end of the Ordovician period. The cause was a combination of climate change and falling sea levels. As the climate cooled and ice sheets expanded, the oceans became shallower. Many species that lived in shallow seas found their habitats destroyed. About 85% of all marine species went extinct. It was a catastrophe, but it was not the end of life. The surviving species continued to evolve. New species emerged. Life recovered. Another mass extinction occurred about 375 million years ago at the end of the Devonian period. This extinction was even more severe than the first. About 80% of all species went extinct. The causes are still debated, but likely involved climate change, ocean acidification, and the spread of oxygen-depleted zones in the oceans. Again, life was nearly erased. Again, life survived and recovered. The most severe mass extinction in Earth's history occurred about 252 million years ago, at the end of the Permian period. This extinction, called the Great Dying, eliminated about 96% of all marine species and about 70% of all terrestrial vertebrate species. It was the closest life has ever come to complete annihilation. The causes involved massive volcanic eruptions in Siberia, which released enormous quantities of carbon dioxide and other gases into the atmosphere, creating a runaway greenhouse effect. The oceans became anoxic, oxygen depleted, and unable to support most life. The climate became extremely hot and unstable. Life was reduced to a handful of surviving species. Yet even from this near-total extinction, life recovered. The surviving species began to diversify. New species evolved. New ecological niches were filled. Within a few million years, the diversity of life had begun to recover. Within tens of millions of years, life had returned to previous levels of diversity. This pattern repeated itself. Each mass extinction was followed by recovery and radiation of new species. Each extinction was followed by evolution. The most recent mass extinction occurred about 66 million years ago, at the end of the Cretaceous period. The cause was an asteroid impact. An asteroid approximately 6 miles in diameter struck the Yucatan Peninsula in what is now Mexico. The impact released energy equivalent to billions of nuclear bombs. The impact created a crater over 100 miles in diameter. The impact sent dust and ash into the atmosphere, blocking out the sun. Photosynthesis ceased, temperatures plummeted, food chains collapsed. About 75% of all species went extinct, including all of the non-avian dinosaurs. Your ancestors survived this extinction. The mammalian lineage that would eventually lead to humans was among the survivors. This is not because your ancestors were particularly large or strong or intelligent. They were small, probably not much larger than a rat. They survived because they were able to hide, to stay warm in the dark and cold, to survive on small amounts of food. They survived because of luck, because their particular combination of traits happened to be suited to the catastrophic environment that followed the impact, but the survival was not automatic. Many mammalian species went extinct in the Cretaceous extinction. Your specific lineage, the lineage that would eventually lead to primates, to humans, to you, survived when many others did not. The probability of your lineage surviving was not high. The probability was, in fact, quite low. Your ancestors were among the lucky few. After the extinction, the surviving mammals diversified rapidly. With the dinosaurs gone, the ecological niches they had occupied were available for other animals to fill. Mammals evolved into the large herbivores and carnivores that dominated the early Cenozoic era. They evolved into the diverse forms we see today. Your lineage, the primates, evolved in the trees of the tropical forests. Your ancestors were small, arboreal, and insectivorous. They were not particularly impressive animals, but they possessed traits that would, over millions of years, lead to complex brains and eventually to consciousness and self-awareness. Between the extinction of the dinosaurs and the present, there have been smaller extinction events, moments when significant numbers of species went extinct due to climate change or other environmental stresses. Each time, your lineage survived. Each time, the probability of survival was not certain. Each time, your ancestors happened to have the traits necessary to survive. If any extinction event had been slightly more severe, if the climate change had been slightly faster, if the food supply had been slightly more depleted, your lineage might not have survived. You would not exist. This is the pattern of life on Earth. Catastrophe followed by recovery. Extinction followed by evolution. Death followed by birth. Life is resilient, but it is also fragile. Life survives, but only barely. Only by luck. Only by the possession of traits that happen to be suited to the current environment. Your existence is the product of your ancestors' survival through multiple extinction events. Your existence is the product of improbable escapes, narrow survivals, moments where the thread was almost cut but somehow held. The mammalian gift. 66 million years ago, your ancestors were small creatures, scurrying in the shadows of the dinosaurs. They were mammals, but they were not like modern mammals. They were small, probably insectivorous, probably nocturnal. They were not impressive animals. They did not dominate their environment. But they possessed a trait that would, over millions of years, become the foundation for intelligence and consciousness. They were warm-blooded. Warm-bloodedness, or endothermy, is the ability to generate heat internally and maintain a constant body temperature. This is distinct from cold-bloodedness, or ectothermy, where body temperature fluctuates with the environment. Reptiles are cold-blooded. Their metabolism is slow when they are cold, fast when they are warm. They cannot move quickly in cold weather. They cannot hunt at night. They must spend time basking in the sun to warm up before they can be active. Mammals are warm-blooded. Their metabolism is constantly active, generating heat to maintain a body temperature that remains relatively constant regardless of the environment. This has enormous advantages. A mammal can be active at night, when many predators are less active and when there is less competition for food. A mammal can survive in cold climates. A mammal can move quickly, even in cool conditions. A mammal can hunt and forage continuously rather than needing to rest and warm up. The cost is high. Maintaining a warm body requires enormous amounts of energy. A mammal must eat far more food than a reptile of the same size. But the advantages often outweigh the costs. Warm-bloodedness allowed mammals to occupy ecological niches that reptiles could not. Mammals thrived in the cool nights and cool climates. They evolved to be active when reptiles were sluggish. They evolved to hunt prey that reptiles could not reach. And they evolved larger and more complex brains. Brain tissue is metabolically expensive. It requires enormous amounts of energy. Cold-blooded animals, with their low metabolic rates, cannot support large brains. But warm-blooded animals with their high metabolic rates can, and they did. Another crucial mammalian trait is parental care. Mammalian mothers produce milk to feed their young. This means that newborn mammals do not have to fend for themselves immediately after birth. They can remain with their mothers, protected and nourished. This allows the young to develop for longer periods before they must survive on their own. Longer development time allows for more complex development. The brain has more time to grow. The nervous system has more time to form connections. The young animal has more time to learn from its mother. This extended parental care, combined with warm-bloodedness and the resulting larger brains, created the conditions for intelligence to evolve. After the extinction of the dinosaurs, mammals diversified explosively. They evolved into countless different forms, adapted to every conceivable ecological niche. They became large and small, herbivorous and carnivorous, aquatic and terrestrial and aerial. But across all these diverse forms, mammals retained the traits that had served them well: warm-bloodedness, parental care, and the capacity for relatively large and complex brains. Among the mammals, primates were not particularly impressive. Primates are an order of mammals that includes monkeys, apes, and humans. The earliest primates appeared about 60 million years ago. They were small, tree-dwelling creatures with grasping hands and forward-facing eyes. They were not the largest animals in their environment. They were not the most powerful predators. But they possessed traits that would eventually lead to human intelligence. Primates have excellent color vision, inherited from their primate ancestors. This is useful for finding ripe fruits in the forest canopy. Primates have grasping hands with opposable thumbs, useful for moving through trees and manipulating objects. Primates are social animals, living in groups and cooperating with each other. Primates have relatively large brains for their body size, and they are capable of learning. They can remember complex social relationships. They can teach their young. They can solve problems. These traits, each one useful for surviving in the forest canopy, each one developed through millions of years of evolution in response to environmental pressures, would eventually be combined in a new way. They would eventually give rise to human intelligence, but that would take millions of years. That would require additional evolutionary developments. That would require a series of improbable events. 30 million years ago, the climate began to change. The tropical forests that had covered much of Africa began to shrink. Grasslands expanded. This environmental change created pressure on the primates that had evolved to live in forests. Some primate species adapted to the changing environment. Some evolved to eat different foods. Some evolved to live on the ground as well as in the trees. Some evolved to live in larger social groups, and some evolved larger brains, capable of solving the problems posed by this new environment. Among these adapting primates was the lineage that would eventually lead to humans. Your ancestors were among the primates that descended from the trees and adapted to the grasslands. They walked on two legs, freeing their hands for other tasks. They developed larger brains. They developed the ability to use tools. They developed language. They developed the ability to think abstractly, to imagine things that do not exist, to plan for the future. They developed consciousness. But none of this was guaranteed. The environmental change that drove primates to adapt to grasslands could have been slightly different. The climate could have recovered. The forests could have expanded again. If the climate had changed differently, if the grasslands had not expanded, your ancestors would not have descended from the trees. They would not have developed the adaptations that led to human intelligence. You would not exist. The mammalian gift, the gift of warm-bloodedness and parental care and large brains, was the foundation that made human intelligence possible. But the realization of that potential required millions of years of additional evolution. It required specific environmental pressures. It required your ancestors to face challenges that forced them to evolve new capabilities. It required an improbable sequence of events, and it required survival through extinction events and environmental catastrophes. Every step was unlikely. Every step was necessary. And every step led to you. The primate inheritance. 25 million years ago, your ancestors were apes. Apes are primates, more closely related to you than monkeys are. Apes are larger than monkeys with larger brains. Apes are more intelligent than monkeys. Apes are capable of more complex social behaviors. Apes have no tails. Apes have longer arms relative to their legs than monkeys do. Your ancestors possessed all these characteristics. They lived in the forests of Africa. They swung through the trees using their long arms. They lived in social groups. They ate fruits and leaves. These ancient apes were not human. They did not have human intelligence. They did not use language as humans do. They did not have self-awareness in the way humans have it. But they possessed the biological foundation that would eventually give rise to these traits. They had large brains. They had complex social lives. They had the ability to learn and remember. They had the ability to teach their young. They had the ability to use simple tools. 6 to 7 million years ago, the lineage that led to humans split from the lineage that led to chimpanzees. This split was not sudden. It was a gradual process. Populations of apes that were geographically separated began to evolve differently. Over millions of years, the differences accumulated. Eventually, the populations were different enough that they no longer interbred. They had become separate species. Your ancestors, the species that split from the chimpanzee lineage, began to walk upright. This was a crucial development. Walking upright on 2 legs is more energetically expensive than walking on 4 legs, as chimpanzees do. But it offers advantages. A biped can see farther over tall grass, useful for spotting predators or prey. A biped has hands free to carry tools or infants. A biped can run faster over long distances. Walking upright became increasingly common in your ancestors. Over millions of years, the skeletal adaptations to upright walking accumulated. The spine changed, the pelvis changed, the legs lengthened, the feet changed. Your ancestors became increasingly bipedal. These early bipedal apes, called hominins, were not yet human. They had brain sizes similar to modern chimpanzees. They did not yet have language. They did not yet have the ability to create complex tools, but they were the beginning of the human lineage. They were your ancestors. They walked upright on the African grasslands. They hunted and gathered food. They lived in social groups. They survived and reproduced, and they passed on their genes to their descendants. Over the next few million years, the hominin brain began to grow. This was not a sudden change. It was a gradual increase, generation after generation, over millions of years. The brain grew larger because individuals with larger brains had advantages. A larger brain allows for more complex thinking. A larger brain allows for better problem solving. A larger brain allows for better social reasoning. Individuals with larger brains survived and reproduced more successfully than individuals with smaller brains. The frequency of genes for larger brains increased in the population. The average brain size increased. But brain growth had costs. A large brain requires enormous amounts of energy. A large brain requires a long period of development. A baby with a large brain is born relatively helpless and requires many years of parental care before it can survive on its own. This means that mothers with large-brained babies had to invest more energy in raising those babies. They had fewer offspring. For large brains to evolve, the advantages of having a large brain had to outweigh these costs. The advantages became apparent as hominin brains grew. Hominins with larger brains were better at making tools. They could imagine a tool before making it. They could improve designs based on experience. They could teach their young how to make tools. Tools allowed hominins to hunt larger prey. Tools allowed hominins to process food more effectively. Tools allowed hominins to survive in new environments. Tools allowed hominins to compete more effectively with predators and with each other. About 2 million years ago, hominins began making more sophisticated tools. They made hand axes. Sharp rocks flaked to create cutting edges. These tools were far more effective than the simple stones used by earlier hominins. The ability to make these tools suggests that the hominin brain had reached a new level of sophistication. It suggests the ability to plan, to imagine, to execute complex tasks. About 1.5 million years ago, hominins began to use fire. This was revolutionary. Fire provided warmth. Fire provided light, allowing activity to continue after dark. Fire allowed hominins to cook food, making it easier to digest and more nutritious. Fire provided protection from predators. Fire allowed hominins to survive in colder climates. The use of fire was not an accident, it was a deliberate choice. It was technology. It was the beginning of human civilization. As hominins used fire and made better tools and lived in larger social groups, their brains continued to grow. About 1 million years ago, a new species of hominin, Homo erectus, had evolved. Homo erectus had a brain about 70% the size of modern human brains. Homo erectus was a hunter and a toolmaker. Homo erectus used fire. Homo erectus was capable of complex thought. Homo erectus was the first truly human-like creature. Homo erectus survived for nearly 2 million years, spreading out of Africa into Asia and Europe. Homo erectus was the ancestor of later human species. About 300,000 years ago, Homo erectus gave rise to new species, including Homo neanderthalensis, the Neanderthals, and Homo sapiens, modern humans. These species had brains as large as or larger than modern human brains. These species were capable of language. These species were capable of abstract thought. These species were capable of art and music and religion. These species were human. But which of these species was your ancestor? This is where the improbability becomes acute. Your lineage had to pass through all of these evolutionary steps. Your ancestors had to walk upright. Your ancestors had to develop larger brains. Your ancestors had to learn to make tools. Your ancestors had to learn to use fire. Your ancestors had to develop language. Your ancestors had to develop the capacity for abstract thought. Each step was unlikely. Each step required millions of years. Each step could have failed. If any step had failed, if any ancestor had died before reproducing, if any ancestor had not met the right partner at the right time, you would not exist. The human thread. 200,000 years ago, modern humans, Homo sapiens, had evolved in Africa. These were not the first humans, but they were the first of our species. They had brains as large as ours. They were capable of language as we are. They were capable of abstract thought, of creating art, of imagining things that do not exist. They were human in every meaningful sense, yet they were still living as hunter-gatherers, still living in small groups, still with no agriculture, no cities, no writing, no civilization as we know it. These early humans were your direct ancestors. Everything that happened to them shaped what you are. Every decision they made, every challenge they faced, every narrow escape from death, every reproduction, every child born, every gene passed down, led eventually to you. The improbability of this lineage is staggering to contemplate. Approximately 70,000 years ago, human populations in Africa faced a catastrophe. A volcanic eruption, possibly the Toba supervolcano in Sumatra, released enormous quantities of ash into the atmosphere. The climate cooled dramatically. Droughts occurred, food became scarce. Human populations declined dramatically. Some estimates suggest that the global human population fell to as few as a few thousand individuals, perhaps even fewer. This genetic bottleneck, this moment where humanity came close to extinction, nearly ended the human species before it had truly begun. Your ancestors were among the survivors of this bottleneck. The probability that your specific lineage survived is vanishingly small. Millions of other potential lineages did not survive. The genes that would have led to different people were lost. But your ancestors survived. Your genetic lineage continued, and from those survivors, all modern humans descended. After the volcanic winter faded, human populations began to expand again. Humans spread out of Africa. Some humans migrated to the Middle East and then to Europe. Some migrated to Asia. Some eventually reached Australia, crossing ocean barriers that required boats or rafts, a technological achievement that suggests sophisticated thinking. Some eventually reached the Americas, crossing the Bering Strait during periods of lower sea level. Humans spread across the globe, adapting to diverse environments, developing diverse cultures. This expansion of human populations happened over tens of thousands of years. It was not a military conquest, not a deliberate colonization, but rather a gradual movement of small groups of people into new territories. Each group that ventured into new territory faced dangers and uncertainties. Many groups probably did not survive, but some did. Some found food and resources, some established populations, some passed on their genes to the next generation. Your ancestors were among those who survived. Your ancestors faced the dangers of migration. Your ancestors faced the uncertainties of new environments. Your ancestors faced predators and starvation and disease. Yet they survived. They found food. They established populations. They had children. They passed on their genes. Approximately 10,000 years ago, human populations in the Fertile Crescent began to practice agriculture. Instead of hunting and gathering food, they cultivated crops and domesticated animals. This was revolutionary. Agriculture allowed larger populations to be supported. Agriculture allowed populations to settle in permanent villages and cities. Agriculture allowed the development of civilization, but agriculture also created new challenges. Agricultural populations were more vulnerable to starvation if crops failed. Agricultural populations were more vulnerable to disease, as living in close proximity spreads infection. Agricultural populations were more vulnerable to warfare, as settled communities could be attacked. Your ancestors faced these challenges. Some of your ancestors were farmers, some were herders, some were hunters and gatherers who resisted agriculture, some were warriors, some were priests or leaders or craftspeople. Each of your ancestors faced the challenges of their time. Each of your ancestors survived long enough to have children. Each of your ancestors passed on their genes. The improbability of your lineage through history is almost impossible to grasp. Consider any point in human history. Consider the ancestors you had at that point. Consider how many of them had to survive, how many of them had to find partners, how many of them had to have children, how many of them had to pass on the exact combination of genes that led to you. If any one of your ancestors had died before reproducing, you would not exist. If any one of your ancestors had had children with a different partner, you would not exist. If any one of your ancestors had had fewer children or more children, the probability of your specific existence would have been different. Consider the odds. You have 2 parents, you have 4 grandparents, you have 8 great-grandparents. Go back 10 generations and you have over 1,000 ancestors. Go back 20 generations and you have over 1,000,000 ancestors. Go back 100 generations, which is only about 2,500 years ago, and you would have more ancestors than there were people on Earth. The numbers do not work out because there is overlap, because your ancestors married cousins or distant relatives. But the point remains. Your lineage stretches back through an enormous number of people. Each one of them had to survive. Each one of them had to have children. Each one of them had to pass on the exact combination of genes that led to you. The probability of this is so small that it is difficult to express. It is not 1 in 1,000,000. It is not 1 in 1,000,000,000. It is not 1 in 1,000,000,000,000. The probability is so small that it transcends mathematical expression. And yet, here you are. Here you exist. Here you think and feel and wonder. Your existence is the product of this improbable lineage. Your existence is a miracle. You are the universe knowing itself. Close your eyes for a moment. Feel your breath moving in and out. Feel the weight of your body. Feel the presence of your consciousness. You are here. You exist. You are aware. And this awareness, this ability to think and feel and wonder, is the culmination of billions of years of cosmic evolution. You are not separate from the universe. You are the universe itself, organized into a form capable of understanding its own nature. The atoms that make up your body were forged in the cores of dying stars. The elements that form your DNA were created through stellar alchemy. The carbon, the oxygen, the nitrogen, the phosphorus, the sulfur, all of it was created in stellar furnaces and scattered by supernovae. You are made of stardust. Your body is a collection of atoms that have existed since the beginning of the universe, that have been transformed and rearranged countless times, that have been part of stars and planets and oceans and countless organisms. Now they are arranged in the form of you. Now they are organized into a consciousness capable of contemplating its own origin. The universe, in creating you, has created something extraordinary. The universe has created a being capable of understanding the laws of physics. The universe has created a being capable of comprehending its own history. The universe has created a being capable of love and compassion and creativity. The universe has created a being capable of wonder. You are the universe's way of knowing itself. You are the cosmos become conscious. Everything that has happened since the Big Bang has led to you. The precise calibration of the laws of physics that allowed stars and planets to form. The death and rebirth of countless stars that created the elements. The formation of Earth at just the right distance from the sun. The emergence of life from simple chemistry. the evolution of consciousness through billions of years, the survival of your ancestors through extinction events and environmental catastrophes, the long journey of human evolution, the development of language and culture and civilization, all of it led to you, and you are not the end of the story. You are a moment in an ongoing process. The universe continues to evolve. Consciousness continues to develop. Your children or your children's children will inherit the universe. They will face challenges that you cannot imagine. They will develop capabilities that you cannot comprehend. The story of the universe is not finished. You are part of that story. You are a link in a chain that stretches from the Big Bang into an unimaginable future. Where are you listening from right now? What time is it there? Are you lying in bed, preparing to sleep? Are you sitting in a quiet place, taking time for yourself? Are you moving through your day, listening as you work or walk or travel? Wherever you are, whatever you are doing, know that this moment is precious. This moment of awareness, this moment of consciousness, this moment of you existing and thinking and feeling is a gift of almost incomprehensible improbability. You exist against odds so overwhelming that they border on the impossible, and that makes you special. That makes you rare. That makes you precious. The journey we have taken together tonight, through 13 billion years of cosmic history, has been a journey toward understanding this simple truth. You are here. You are conscious. You are aware. And your existence is a miracle, not in the sense of supernatural intervention, but in the sense of improbability so extreme that it transcends our ability to calculate it. The universe, through billions of years of evolution, has created you. The universe has created a being capable of understanding the universe itself. I'd like to thank you for joining me on this journey. If this exploration of cosmic history and the improbability of your existence has brought you a sense of wonder, if it has created a space of calm and contemplation in your mind, if it has helped you relax or drift towards sleep, then my purpose has been fulfilled. I would deeply appreciate it if you would like this video and subscribe to the Relaxing Science channel. Your subscription helps us continue creating content that explores the intersection of science and contemplation, that helps people find peace in understanding the universe. If you have found meaning in this exploration, if you have felt the weight of your own improbable existence, if you have sensed the connection between your consciousness and the cosmos, please share this with others. Tell us in the comments where you are listening from and what time it is there. Tell us what this journey meant to you. Tell us what aspect of this cosmic history touched you most deeply. Your comments help us understand what resonates with our audience and help us create better content in the future. The universe is old, life is rare, consciousness is precious, and you are here, you are now, you are aware. Carry this understanding with you. When you face challenges, when you feel small or insignificant, remember that you are made of stardust. Remember that you are the product of billions of years of evolution. Remember that every ancestor who came before you, stretching back through millions of years, had to survive long enough to have you. Remember that your existence is a miracle. Remember that you matter. As you drift off to sleep tonight, or as you continue through your day, hold on to this sense of wonder. Hold on to this sense of connection to the cosmos. The universe is vast, yes, but you are part of it. The universe is ancient, yes, but you exist now, in this moment. The universe is cold and empty in many places, yes, but here on Earth in this moment, consciousness exists, life exists, you exist, and that is the greatest miracle of all. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. Thank you for caring enough about these questions to spend time contemplating them. We hope you will return to the Relaxing Science channel to continue this journey of discovery and contemplation. There are so many mysteries yet to explore. There are so many wonders yet to contemplate. There are so many stories yet to tell about the cosmos and your place within it. Until next time, be well, be present, be aware, and remember that you are the universe knowing itself. Rest now, let your mind settle, let your thoughts drift like stars in the night sky. You are safe, you are here, you are part of something vast and beautiful and ancient and ongoing. Sleep well, knowing that your existence is a gift. Sleep well, knowing that you matter. Sleep well, knowing that you are the universe made conscious, and that consciousness itself is the greatest miracle the universe has yet created. End of screenplay total.